Good morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. Coming up today, with school holidays leapfrogging themselves around the country at the moment, I don't know about you, but I have seen just about every second kid on an e-bike in my neck of the woods. Now, I do not want to demonise kids getting out and about and riding bikes. It's all very wholesome. However, every week I'm also seeing stories of e-bike crashes and bike boy gangs that are essentially precursor hoon drivers harassing people. And when a friend of mine spoke to me recently in tears after her ex bought her kids e-bikes for their birthdays, I thought it was maybe time to find out exactly what this mode of transport revolution is doing. But before we do that, here's what was happening while you were sleeping. It's Wednesday, July 15. The Prime Minister will announce an Office of AI today aimed at tackling Australia's concerns about data centres, job loss through workplace automation, copyright protections for artists and the use of AI by our defence forces. The Office of AI will create new Australian standards for tech, including bringing together the different approaches to building new data centres by the states and territories. The PM will say that we will be the first country in the world to bring AI into a single national framework, comparing it to other advances such as aviation in the 20s and genetics in the 90s. The move comes as AI giant Anthropic, the creator of Claude, looks to make Australia one of its training grounds, the second largest next to the US, but it wants to do so without having to pay for material to train its AI, like music, voices, and written material. Prosecutors overseeing the case against veteran broadcaster Alan Jones have dropped 4 more charges after withdrawing one back in June. The court is preparing to hear the case against Jones early next month, the prosecution withdrawing 4 charges of indecent assault, leaving Jones to defend 22 charges against him, the majority of which centre around assault accusations. According to court documents, 3 charges relate to complainant D, who's accusing Mr Jones of touching him on the thigh, backside and in the crotch area on the outside of his clothing in an incident dating back to 2008. The 4th relates to complainant G, who's also accused Jones of touching him inappropriately while watching a performance at the Opera House. Both complainants are now no longer a part of the case. Opposition leader Angus Taylor says he won't condemn Pauline Hanson for meeting with British far-right activist Tommy Robinson, the same guy that saw Karl Stefanovic booted from his role at Channel 9 after he interviewed him on his podcast. Senator Hanson was in London this past week where she appeared on camera with Robinson, an anti-Islam activist who's been convicted of multiple assaults, stalking and inciting violence. Mr Taylor says any negative commentary he makes around One Nation is done with a heavy heart, but said he would not meet Robinson himself. While he's been courted by Australian right-wing politicians, Robinson has been condemned by conservative figures in the UK, including Reform leader Nigel Farage. Mr Taylor says his focus is on Australia's economic situation and he wouldn't tell Senator Hanson what to do.
I'm not going to give other people advice or other political parties advice on what they should do, but I'm saying that's not my focus. I've got no intention or plan to meet with Tommy Robinson.
That's Mr Taylor speaking to 2GB. He also spoke to the ABC 7:30 program last night where he confirmed there would be no future coalition with One Nation, saying he was ruling it out, again saying their economic policy would leave the country with an eternity of pain. Iran is firing missiles at Jordan and Bahrain after the US's 5-hour attack as both vie for control of the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices have now been pushed to a 4-week high, Brent crude futures gaining 5% to hit US $87 a barrel, the highest since mid-June but still below the peak at the start of the war before it dipped slightly. US forces carried out waves of attacks for the 3rd night in a row on Tuesday after Tehran said it had closed the strait, prompting US President Donald Trump to reinstate a blockade of Iranian shipping and proposed charging a 20% fee to guard the waterway. Iran hit back by attacking a US Army base in Jordan with ballistic missiles, while Bahrain, which hosts a US naval base, said it had fended off Iranian aerial attacks. Jordan said it had also shot down 4 ballistic missiles. A Sunshine Coast refuge is caring for a sick northern giant petrel found on a beach at Noosa as it waits for test results for potential bird flu. If it is positive for H5N1, it would be Queensland's first bird flu case and would also mark positive cases across 4 states, with several in WA, South Australia and 1 in New South Wales already confirmed. Twinnies Pelican and Seabird Rescue, a charity managed by identical twins Paula and Bridget Powers, is now looking to expand its quarantine facility in anticipation of more sick birds arriving. The prosecutors in the case against one of the so-called ISIS brides has opposed bail after it was revealed the mother of four had shown her children Islamic State propaganda. Rayan El-Houli returned to Australia from Syria in 2025 and was allowed to live in the community for 8 months before she was arrested and charged with being a member of a terrorist organisation. Her lawyer claims that his client has renounced Islamic State and regrets putting her children in harm's way. But police say there's no evidence she's done so, and she's not attended any de-radicalisation programs since her return. A video was also obtained showing Ms. El-Houli allegedly showing her children propaganda videos in 2025, where she allegedly tells them that disbelievers would be put in hellfire. In another video, she allegedly asks a child holding a toy gun how to hold the weapon and asks questions about whether they'd seen how the Mujahideen kill the infidels with a knife, asking the child to answer the question, how did they slaughter them with a knife? A decision on whether she'll be granted bail will be made on Monday. Rolling Stones frontman Mick Jagger says he regrets advice given to him by Beatles legend John Lennon about Elvis. Jagger told Conan O'Brien's podcast that Lennon had met Elvis and it had shattered his idea of the singer. So when he told Jagger, never meet your heroes and I would never meet Elvis, Mick, if I were you, he listened, but says he now regrets that decision and wishes he'd done it anyway, saying maybe his version of Elvis would have been different. That's the top stories for today. Next, e-bikes. The kids are loving them, they're changing our habits, but is it all for the good? A recent article in The Conversation is titled Lyme Bike Leg, What Doctors Are Seeing in E-Bike Crashes. It explains how cases of a particular type of injury are becoming more common in emergency departments across the UK. A seemingly minor bike accident ends with a complex fracture with a shin bone piercing through the skin. And I am sorry, I know that is a lot for this time of day. But the injury is becoming so common, according to Senior Clinical Lecturer in Trauma and Orthopaedic Surgery at Queen Mary University in London, Jerry Sang, that some surgeons are dubbing it Lyme Bike Leg, in reference to the shared e-bike company Lyme. According to data from St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, serious injuries from e-bikes doubled in 2025 compared to the year before and have increased 350% since 2023. Now, obviously, that's not just a case of all Aussies all of a sudden becoming very clumsy. It is because sales of e-bikes have boomed in recent years. Because they don't have to formally report e-bike sales, we don't have set numbers. But the NRMA commissioned a report through Ernst & Young back in 2022, which established that sales between 2017 and 2022 jumped by nearly 190,000, 9,000 compared to 197,000, and that number is growing. The NRMA is predicting that sales in 2026 will be somewhere between 250 and 300,000. While that particular leg injury is becoming more common, so are others. One in particular is even more alarming, with the number of people, including children, being rushed to hospital with traumatic brain injuries. Because these injuries aren't just like ordinary bike-related injuries, although that doesn't rule them out completely from a standard bike experience, but these injuries are more consistent with motorbike injuries. So, what exactly is an e-bike and how do they work? Technology journalist Trevor Long is the host of the podcast Two Blokes Talking Tech. Trevor, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
Great to be with you.
Okay, I understand, Trevor, that there are two types of e-bikes. One I'm seeing referred to as an e-pack or an electrically powered assisted cycle, and one that is referred to as pedal assist. Can you give me an understanding of what the difference between the two are?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because an e-bike, the first e-bike I reviewed looked like a mountain bike, but it had a really fat frame. That's because there was a battery built into the frame. And what you got from that battery was a little bit of assistance when you're riding. And this is, 8-10 years ago. It was amazing because as someone who doesn't cycle a lot, I could take this bike out. And even when approaching a big hill, the electric assistance would kick in. So I just kept pedaling and it didn't feel like I was going up a big hill. It just felt like it was a bit easier for me. There was still effort involved, but nothing like the effort you would normally have riding up a hill on a bicycle. So that's pedal assistance, which is basically as you pedal, you get a little bit of a push along by the electric motor. It's only operating when you're pedaling. And the other style of bike is essentially electric motorbikes. Let's not beat around the bush. They're able to be ridden without pedaling. And that's the huge legal leap that is made. But there is a bit of a grey area in between with some bikes that, will go off the line if you like. So sitting at a set of lights or stopped, you can use a throttle like a motorbike to get going and then pedal. And those bikes, for example, in different states are different, but those bikes are legal in New South Wales to be able to have an electric motor that powers you up to 6 kilometres an hour. But then the electric motor can only otherwise be used if you're pedaling. So it's a very, very complicated space, especially for parents.
Can we talk about how these then are being tampered with? Because as you mentioned there, they're supposed to have a top speed of 25 kilometres an hour. But I'm reading all the time that bikes are being sold to exceed that. How does that even happen? And how do we know if an e-bike, say we're purchasing one secondhand, how do we know if it's been tampered with?
So basically, there's factories churning these things out in China because they saw the demand, and some people, created designs for these kind of motorbike-looking bicycles, big fat tires, and they literally look like motorbikes, and they were a cool look, a pedal bike that kind of looks really cool. But then the regulations were very clear about the speed limit essentially on them. But some markets around the world don't have rules. And some manufacturers don't really care for rules. And so what you'll get absolute legitimate retailers here in Australia promoting themselves online on social media with these amazing looking bikes. They look like big fat boy Harley Davidson motorbikes, and saying, it's $3,500 for a cool new e-bike. And then if you go into the comments, or even on their websites, they'll talk about how they are restricted and governed by rules. But once you buy one, you walk out the front door and you say, hey, what's the code? And there's basically a button combination code. Press the up, down, left, right in this order, and you'll unlock the restrictions from the bike. I think almost all the, I guess, mass market bikes, if you want to call them those, not the mainstream brands, so the big cycling brands are not doing this, but all these new startups and things essentially have a code that can be engineered and just enacted, so the bike is now not limited by the restrictions that were put on it when it rolled off the factory.
Okay, that sounds like what we used to do to hack PlayStation games back in the day. So this is essentially doing the exact same thing, but then what is that making that bike capable of? Like, how fast can a bike that's been unlocked in this manner go? Do we know what its top speed is?
It would vary, depending on the motor that's in the bike, the battery size, and all these different things. But let's be clear: if you had a bike that was limited to 25 and it's been unlocked, it's probably going 50 at least. Now, just for a minute, think about how 50 feels in a car, and then wind down the window and put your hand out and realize the speed of that. It's dangerous. It's a motorbike, and I think that's what I keep calling them. I don't call them e-bikes. I call them motorbikes. They just happen to be electrically powered. Just like my electric car, it's just a car, it's just electrically powered. It still has the same capabilities of a petrol car. These bikes are motorbikes. They can be ridden on the road. They often look like motorbikes, but they normally lack a registration plate and a helmet.
So just to be clear, the ones that we're unlocking here, are they the ones that we refer to as the e-packs, the electrically powered ones, or can you do it to the pedal one as well?
This is where it gets worse. Recently, and I would say the last couple of years, it's basically both. So your e-pack, your electric motorbike, they're being unlocked to allow for higher speeds. The pedal assistance bikes, and I'd be very clear, not your mainstream bike or cycle brands. They're still making e-bikes and e-mountain bikes for that market. But there are pedal assistance bikes that are being unlocked to allow them not to require the pedaling. So they can literally just be used with a throttle. Now, often those ones won't be going 50. They might go 30 or 40 though. But the thing is, they are very small, flimsy bicycles that are now capable of going 25, 30 kilometres an hour without pedaling. And, I think if a parent listening to this, especially if you're a parent who gave your child one of these bikes. Trust me, they've been online and they've unlocked it. Would you consider giving your child a petrol motorbike, even just a little one, to let them ride the streets in? And most parents would say no. And that's why they think they've done a good thing by getting their kids out of the house and they're riding around. Great. But it's extremely dangerous what they're doing.
Could you tell when a bike's been unlocked? I mean, beyond getting on it and riding it above 25 kilometres an hour, is there a way to tell when it's been unlocked?
I think the simplest way is to turn the bike on, lift up the back wheel because it's normally rear wheel powered, and turn the throttle. So if it's a button throttle or a twist of the clamp throttle like a motorbike, throttle it. And look, if you don't believe your teenager, get them to show you. Lift the bike up and then show you where the throttle is and run it. Now, if it simply goes, then it's likely illegal. If it seems to go but not with a lot of pace, then it may be on the edge of legality, like in some states where you can have that initial level of throttle assistance. But in most cases, if it was sold to you as a pedal bike and you can throttle it to make the wheel turn, it's illegal. And if it looks like a big fat boy, fat tires bike and you can really get that wheel spinning, then I've got almost no doubt that it's been bypassed and overridden. But unfortunately, there isn't an obvious thing for the untrained eye. Police are very good at working it out, looking at the specs and going, hang on, press this button and find out. But the average mum and dad would struggle other than that basic test.
Is there a way to monitor it? So I know that some e-bikes connect back to an app. Is there a way to monitor the speed via that way?
Look, I don't know that for sure, to be honest. I think that the apps are normally for things like, locking and unlocking the bike and perhaps getting some sort of location status, like in an Apple AirTag. And also, it may well be the case that for some teens, the app doesn't show the modifications that have been done through software to the bike.
And can you put the cat back in the bag? Can you re-lock it? And is there a way to stop anyone from unlocking it?
I've got no doubt the codes exist to relock them. They're probably harder to find than the unlock codes, though the manufacturer, if reliable, should be able to provide them. But preventing them from being unlocked again, I think almost impossible.
While e-bikes are getting more of us out of the house and into the real world, reducing our reliance on cars and easing congestion, it's also seen the rise of bike hoons. Just this week, Queensland Police seized more than 100 dangerous e-bikes and gave out 420 traffic infringements after new laws came into effect on July 1. The new rules introduced roadside breath testing for e-bike and e-scooter users and the seizure of non-compliant devices. Parents of under 16s riding a non-compliant device, so a motor that can do more than 25 kilometres an hour, will cop the fine on the kid's behalf. From August, in Queensland, riders will also need to be licensed and over the age of 16. Now, some will say that this is nanny state behaviour and that bikes should be exempt from being policed in this manner, but it also needs to be weighed up against other data. Since July 1, there have been 22 e-bike injuries in Queensland, with one teenager dying. The first drink riding arrest happened just 7 minutes after the new laws became a reality. WA has gone a step further. Earlier this year, they acted on reports of increasing e-bike hoon behaviour. Police are now crushing e-bikes and e-scooters seized during patrols. One officer hit back at those who said it was just kids having fun. He explained that it went way beyond that they were throwing rocks at cars and spraying sand onto highways with traffic going 90 kilometres an hour. One bike was clocked doing 75 k's an hour on a beachside footpath weaving around pedestrians. There have been a few recorded e-bike pedestrian deaths too. A 65-year-old man died after he was struck by an e-bike on a footpath in Western Sydney last year. Another died after a collision with a modified bike in Victoria. There is no centralised e-bike death database across the country at the moment, but it's believed there have been at least 50 e-bike-related deaths in Australia in recent years. Now, the highest proportion of those are children and teens, at least 8 in the 13 months to early 2026. One of those, a 15-year-old in Tasmania who died on New Year's Day. It's believed he was the first e-bike death in that state. But the behaviour that the WA police described is being seen replicated across the country. In May, for example, a She Shapes history tour in Wollongong was interrupted by a group of young boys on e-bikes who surrounded the women and shouted racial, sexist and homophobic slurs at them.
If you want to film me, I film you.
They follow the group, constantly surrounding them on the bikes for more than 20 minutes. The rules around e-bike use differs between all the states and territories, and it does require some research. So make sure you look up what is okay where you live. Some will also have age limits, for example. The federal government is now also cracking down on the standard of bike that can be imported into Australia and sold as an e-bike. But most importantly, if you are a parent listening to this, check and see what your kid has been up to once you send them out on that brand new e-bike. Thanks for hanging with the Solo Bureau today, team. If there's a story you'd like me to check out in more detail for you, hit me up on Substack or DM me on Instagram. And of course, make sure you rate and review the show wherever you can, whenever you can, on your favourite podcast app. It does wonders for the old algorithm, and you know we're all fighting that thing all the time. And it gets me noticed, and when you get people talking, they might just even start paying me to do this. Thank you to everyone who's done it already. I have been reading through them and they have been just glorious. I appreciate you all. Have a great day. I will catch you back here tomorrow.